Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're tackling some fascinating stuff, really diving into the role of faith in Donald Trump's vision for America. We're going to be looking specifically at one of his recent speeches where he lays it all out. Yeah. And let me tell you, he does not hold back when it comes to talking about the importance of Christianity.
No, he certainly doesn't. It's really striking how he connects the idea of making America great again directly to bringing Christianity back into the forefront of American life.
Yeah, and it's not just a passing comment. It's like a recurring theme throughout the whole speech. He actually says at one point, and I'm quoting here, "Religion and Christianity are the biggest things missing from this country. We've lost religion in our country." Pretty strong statement, right?
Yes, it really makes you stop and think, what does he mean by lost religion? How does he see that playing out in America today?
Right, like what's he getting at?
Well, it's interesting because this idea that America has strayed from its religious roots, that's not a new idea. We've seen the sentiment pop up throughout history, especially during times of change or uncertainty. You know, even going back to the early republic, there was this sense that America had a special covenant with God, a divine mission to fulfill.
So is Trump kind of tapping into that historical current? Or is there something different about how he's framing it?
That's the million-dollar question. You know, using religious rhetoric in American politics, that's nothing new. But what's interesting with Trump is how he intertwines this call for a Christian revival with a very specific interpretation of American history and identity.
Okay, so can you give us an example? Like, where do we see that in the speech?
Well, he spends a good chunk of the speech talking about this God Bless the USA Bible that he's promoting.
Oh, yeah, the one that includes the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence alongside the biblical text. I remember seeing headlines about that. What's the message there?
It's pretty powerful imagery, right? By physically placing those documents together, he's making a statement about their interconnectedness. It feeds into this idea that America's founding is fundamentally rooted in Judeo-Christian values.
Okay, so to really understand America, you need to understand the Bible.
That seems to be the argument he's making.
It's interesting. Can we unpack that term a bit? Judeo-Christian values? I feel like it gets thrown around a lot. But what does it actually mean in this context?
Right. It's a good question because it's a term loaded with meaning, and it's often used to evoke a sense of shared morality and tradition. But generally speaking, it refers to a set of ethical principles that are believed to be derived from both the Bible and Jewish tradition. Things like the sanctity of life, the importance of family, personal responsibility, honesty, those kinds of things.
Got it. So how does this tie back to Trump's overall message?
Well, he goes on to argue that these Judeo-Christian values, which he sees as essential to America's greatness, are under attack.
Under attack. Whoa. Okay, that's a pretty loaded statement.
Right.
What does he see as the source of this attack? Does he give any specific examples?
He doesn't get super specific in this particular speech, but he often points to what he perceives as a growing secularism in American society, the influence of liberal elites and policies that he views as eroding traditional family values. So it's about framing a battle between those who hold these values and those who, in his view, are trying to dismantle them.
So it's not just about personal faith. It's about the role of these values in the public sphere and how he sees them shaping the very fabric of American society.
Exactly. It's about more than just believing. It's about how those beliefs should be reflected in America's policies and overall direction.
So we're seeing a very intentional weaving together of religious beliefs and political ideology.
Absolutely.
It's not just about personal spirituality.
It becomes a driving force in the public arena, shaping how we govern ourselves, how we interact with each other, and ultimately how we define what it means to be American.
Okay, so we've established that faith, particularly Christianity, plays a central role in how Trump views America. But how does he see this translating into concrete actions? What would this vision look like in practice?
That's a great question, and it leads us into some really fascinating territory. Let's unpack some specific examples of how this vision manifests in his policies and rhetoric.
Right, let's do it. Let's dive in.
All right, so picking up where we left off, let's look at how this vision for a more Christian America translates into actual policies and actions. Because it's one thing to talk about the importance of faith, right? But it's another to actually see how those beliefs shape decision-making.
Exactly. It's got to be more than just words.
Yeah.
So what are some concrete examples of how this plays out?
Well, one area where we see this vision pretty clearly is in his approach to judicial appointments. He made it a point to appoint judges who he believed would uphold what he called Judeo-Christian values, particularly on those hot-button social issues.
Right. Those judges he kept calling pro-life and originalists.
Exactly. And these appointments had a huge impact on the legal landscape. potentially influencing American law for decades to come. Think about the Supreme Court, for example. The judges he appointed were often known for their very conservative views on issues like abortion, same-sex marriage, religious freedom.
So he's putting people in positions of power who share his vision. But how did that actually translate into specific policies or changes?
Yeah.
Can you give us an example?
Sure, take the issue of religious liberty. He often framed himself as a champion for religious freedom, particularly for Christians who felt like their beliefs were being marginalized or silenced. Remember that executive order he signed, promoting free speech and religious liberty?
Yeah, that one caused quite a bit of controversy. What was the thinking behind that?
Well, supporters saw it as a necessary step to protect religious groups from government overreach, ensuring they wouldn't be forced to violate their beliefs. They argued it was about leveling the playing field, giving religious voices an equal footing in the public square.
But it also raised a lot of concerns about potential discrimination, right?
Mm-hmm.
People worried it would be used to justify denying services or discriminating against LGBTQ individuals or other groups in the name of religious freedom.
Absolutely. That's the tricky part about navigating this intersection of religion and politics,
Yeah.
right? Trying to find that balance between protecting religious freedom while also ensuring that those freedoms aren't used to infringe on the rights of others. It's a complex and ongoing challenge.
It definitely seems like there's a lot of potential for conflict and tension baked into this vision of a more Christian America.
There is. And it's important to acknowledge that this vision, while appealing to some, also raised anxieties and concerns for others. There were folks who worried about the implications of a society where one particular religion was given a privileged position.
Right, because America is a pretty diverse place. Religiously speaking,
Yeah.
You've got people from all sorts of faiths and backgrounds,
Right.
and then you've got those who don't subscribe to any religion at all. So how do you square this vision with the reality of that diversity?
That's a critical question. And it gets to the heart of this ongoing debate about the role of religion in American public life. It forces us to grapple with some really fundamental questions about what it means to be an inclusive society, how we balance individual rights with the desire to uphold certain values, and how we ensure everyone feels respected and protected regardless of their beliefs.
Yeah, and it seems like this tension between different perspectives is something we see play out throughout his presidency.
Yeah.
There are those who feel like he's a strong defender of their values, while others feel alienated or even threatened by his rhetoric and policies.
Exactly. And understanding that dynamic is essential to making sense of the broader impact of his vision for a more Christian America. It's a vision that sparks both hope and fear, admiration and resistance. And it's a vision that continues to shape the political landscape even today.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
what's the key takeaway you want our listeners to walk away with? What's the most important thing to understand about how this vision plays out in the real world?
I think the key thing to remember is that this isn't just about abstract ideas or theological debates. This has real-world consequences that impact people's lives, whether it's judicial appointments, executive orders, or even just the tone and language used in political discourse. These things have the power to shape our laws, our institutions, and ultimately how we experience life in America.
Well said. So we've seen how this vision translates into action and how it sparked both support and pushback. But what about the bigger picture? How does all of this fit into the broader historical context of religion in America?
Now that's where things get really interesting, because understanding Trump's vision requires understanding how it both draws upon and departs from the long and complex relationship between faith and politics in this country.
Sounds like we're about to go even deeper down the rabbit hole.
You could say that. Get ready, because in our final part, we're going to explore how this vision resonates with historical trends and how it forces us to confront some fundamental questions about American identity.
Okay, so we've explored how this vision of a more Christian America takes shape in policy and rhetoric. Now let's zoom out and consider the historical context. How does Trump's approach compare to how other presidents have navigated the relationship between faith and politics?
Well, it's important to remember that religion, particularly Christianity, has been intertwined with American politics since the very beginning. From the Puritans who sought religious freedom in the New World to the founding fathers who invoked divine providence, faith has always played a role in shaping our national narrative.
So it's not like Trump's the first president to bring up religion, but is there something distinct about how he's approaching it?
There are definitely some unique elements to his approach. While many presidents have invoked faith in their speeches or drawn upon religious principles to guide their policies, Trump's rhetoric often goes a step further. He doesn't just acknowledge the role of religion in American history, he frames it as the essential foundation of our nation's identity and greatness.
Yeah, it's like he seems to be drawing a direct line between America's success and its adherence to Christian values, almost suggesting that straying from those values is what's led to the problems we face today.
Exactly. It's the sense of a fallen nation, a country that has lost its way and needs to be restored to its former glory through a re-embrace of its Christian roots. This kind of rhetoric taps into a powerful emotional chord, particularly for those who feel like their values are under threat or that America's best days are behind us.
It's interesting, though, because, as we've discussed, America's history with religion is complicated. It's not always been a story of unity and progress. There have been times when religious beliefs have been used to justify discrimination, persecution, and even violence.
Absolutely. We can't ignore the darker chapters of our history: the Salem witch trials, the persecution of Mormons, the use of biblical arguments to defend slavery. These are stark reminders that religious fervor, when unchecked, can have dangerous consequences. So how do we reconcile this tension between the positive aspects of faith, the ideals of love, compassion and justice, and the potential for it to be used to justify harm?
It's a question that thinkers, leaders have grappled with for centuries. I think the key part of it is recognizing that religion, like any powerful force, can be wielded for good or for ill. It's about being aware of the potential for abuse, upholding the principle of religious freedom for all, not just for certain groups, and ensuring that our laws and policies reflect the values of tolerance and inclusivity.
So where does that leave us in terms of understanding the implications of Trump's vision? What should our listener be thinking about as they process all of this information?
Well, I think it's crucial for each individual to grapple with these questions on their own terms. What role does faith play in their own lives? How do they see the relationship between religion and government? And what kind of America do they envision for the future? These aren't easy questions, and there's no one-size-fits-all answer. It sounds like we're being encouraged to do some soul-searching here.
Yeah.
To really think critically about our own values and beliefs and how they shape our understanding of the world around us.
Precisely. And I think that's a valuable takeaway from this deep dive. We've explored the nuances of Trump's vision, we've examined the historical context, and we've grappled with some complex questions about the role of faith in American society. Ultimately, though, it's up to each of us to decide what we make of it all.
Well said. I think that's a perfect note to end on. We've covered a lot of ground today, but hopefully we've equipped our listeners with the information and insights they need to continue exploring this complex and ever-evolving topic.
It's been a fascinating journey, and I appreciate you joining us for this deep dive.
And to our listeners, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep engaging in these important conversations. Until next time, happy diving,